To hear all our audiobooks, especially those that aren't available on YouTube, become a Patreon supporter. It's the first link in the description below. Thank you for your support. The Governance of China, Volume 4, by Xi Jinping. Part 7, New Development Stage, Philosophy, and Dynamic. A great advance towards national rejuvenation. Part of the speech at the Second Full Assembly of the Fifth Plenary Session of the 19th CPC Central Committee. October 29th, 2020. Entering the new development stage marks a great advance towards our national rejuvenation. I have said that national rejuvenation has been the greatest dream of the Chinese people since China's modern era began in 1840. Due to foreign invasion and corrupt feudal rule, China missed the opportunity for an industrial revolution and fell far behind the times. Our nation suffered unprecedented misery. After the Opium Wars, championed by people of lofty ideals, the Chinese people searched painstakingly for a road to modernization. The plan for national reconstruction, written by Dr. Sun Yat-sen in the late 1910s, was China's first blueprint for modernization, but the drive ended in failure as it was simply impossible to modernize a semi-colonial and semi-feudal society. Over the past 100 years, since the founding of the Communist Party of China, all the efforts made by the CPC and by the Chinese people under its leadership have served just one purpose: building China into a strong, modern country and realizing national rejuvenation. After the founding of the PRC in 1949, our party led the people in exploring all possible paths to China's modernization. In his report on the work of the government delivered at the first session of the First National People's Congress in 1954, Zhou Enlai pointed out, unless we establish powerful modern industry, modern agriculture, modern communications and transport, and a modern national defense, we shall neither shake off backwardness and poverty nor attain our revolutionary goals. Footnote 1. Zhou Enlai. Turning China into a powerful, modern, socialist, industrialized country. Selected works of Zhou Enlai, Volume 2, English edition, Foreign Languages Press, Beijing, 1989, page 142. End of footnote 1. In 1956, Mao Zedong said, "Our people should have an ambitious plan and strive to reverse backwardness in the economy, science, and culture within decades, and quickly reach the world's advanced level." Footnote 2, Mao Zedong. The purpose of socialist revolution is to release productive forces. Collected works of Mao Zedong, Volume 7, Chinese edition, People's Publishing House, Beijing, 1999, page 2, end of footnote 2. He also warned that if we failed to achieve this, we should be scoured from the earth. In December 1964, in his report on the work of the government to the first session of the Third National People's Congress, Zhou proposed a further plan. We may envisage the development of our economy in two stages, beginning with the third five-year plan. The first stage is to build an independent and relatively comprehensive industrial and economic structure. The second stage is to accomplish the overall modernization of agriculture, industry, national defense, and science and technology, so that our economy will be among the front ranks of world economies. Footnote 3, Zhou Enlai. Major tasks for developing the national economy. Selected works of Zhou Enlai, Volume 2, English edition, Foreign Languages Press, Beijing, 1989, page 458. End of footnote 3. Although the plan did not come to full fruition due to the turmoil of the Cultural Revolution, from 1949 to 1978, our party on the whole succeeded in leading the people in establishing from scratch an independent and relatively complete industrial and economic structure, and in safeguarding national sovereignty and security. China made substantial progress in its socialist construction. After we launched reform and opening up in 1978, Deng Xiaoping proposed a three-step strategic plan for modernization, ensuring that the people would have adequate food and clothing by the end of the 1980s, giving them a moderately prosperous life by the end of the 20th century, increasing the per capita GNP level to that of moderately developed countries, and realizing basic modernization by the middle of the 21st century. By the turn of the 21st century, moderate prosperity had largely been achieved. We then introduced the goals of achieving moderate prosperity at a higher level for all by the centenary of the party in 2021 and, in approximately 3 more decades, achieving basic modernization and turning China into a modern socialist country by the centenary of the PRC in 2049. Since the 18th CPC National Congress in 2012, socialism with Chinese characteristics has entered a new era, and the Chinese nation has stood up, become better off, and grown in strength. On this foundation, our party drew up a plan at its 19th National Congress in 2017 to attain the second centenary goal in 2 stages, realizing basic socialist modernization by 2035 and developing China into a great modern socialist country that is prosperous, strong, democratic, culturally advanced, harmonious, and beautiful by the middle of the 21st century. Turning China into a modern socialist country has been the theme of all 14 5-year plans. Our determination and our resolve to reach this goal have never wavered, despite occasionally straying from our path. And in the face of many unexpected difficulties and setbacks, we have expanded our understanding of this grand program, improved our strategies, and broadened our experience. All of this has paved the way for China's drive to modernization and laid practical, theoretical, and institutional foundations for fully building a modern socialist country in this new development stage. Create a new development dynamic and sharpen the competitive edge. Part of the speech at the second full assembly of the 5th plenary session of the 19th CPC Central Committee. October 29th, 2020. Go all out to create a new development dynamic. We have decided to create a double development dynamic with the domestic economy as the mainstay, and the domestic economy and international engagement providing mutual reinforcement. This policy decision was made in the context of our current development stage, environment, and changing conditions, and in particular the changes in our comparative strengths. This is a strategic plan tailored to the prevailing situation in China and a vision for the future. A plan that will bring a systemic and profound change to China. We should accelerate the creation of this new development dynamic from an overall and strategic perspective. In essence, this is also an essential choice we have made in order to adapt to our new development stage and gain a new edge in international cooperation and competition. Before we launched reform and opening up in 1978, the domestic market was the mainstay of our national economy, and imports and exports accounted for only a small share. Later, we opened up to the outside world to expand foreign trade and attract more investment. Since we acceded to the World Trade Organization in 2001, we have fully participated in the International Division of Labor and engaged with the international market. A development dynamic relying on the international market for the supply of resources and sales of products has taken shape. Riding on the waves of economic globalization, this has played a pivotal role in our rapid economic growth and the improvement of our people's lives. The international financial crisis of 2008 was a watershed in the evolution of our development dynamic. In the face of daunting external crises, we stimulated domestic demand to bolster steady and rapid growth, and made it the main engine of our economy. There has since been a significant increase in the share of domestic market in our economy. After the 18th CPC National Congress in 2012, we continued our policy of expanding domestic demand, and our economic development was driven more by domestic demand, especially by consumption. Our country's trade-to-GDP ratio dropped from a high point of 67% in 2006 to nearly 32% in 2019. The proportion of the current account surplus in GDP has also fallen from over 10% at its peak to around 1% at present. The contribution of domestic demand to economic growth has grown to more than 100% in recent years. Our policy to create a new development dynamic is based on China's economic conditions and its development trend. It is a practical blueprint. In the coming years, the dominant position of the domestic market in our economy will become more apparent, and the potential of domestic demand will be further unlocked. In terms of demand, with 1.4 billion people, including a middle-income population of more than 400 million, China's retail sales will soon surpass that of the U.S., ranking first in the world, and still leaving room for further growth. In terms of supply, our strong production capacity based on the huge domestic market can facilitate the integration and innovation of factors of production worldwide and maximize the effects of economies of scale and agglomeration. As long as we continue to adapt to changing circumstances and implement precisely targeted policies, we have all the strengths to create a new development dynamic and gain a new competitive edge. First, creating the new development dynamic is neither a passive response to pressure nor a stopgap measure, but a proactive move aiming to seize the initiative in development. Looking around, the other major economies are dominated by their domestic demand with a smooth internal flow of production, distribution, circulation, and consumption. China is now the world's second largest economy and largest manufacturing country. The need to adjust the relationship between the domestic economy and international engagement has become increasingly apparent. This was our primary consideration when we put forward this strategy. In the face of growing international instability and uncertainty, we should increase reliance on our domestic market, unleash the potential of domestic demand, which will reduce our exposure to external impacts and the effect of falling foreign demand, and ensure normal functioning of the economy and general stability in society in extreme circumstances. Second, what we aim to create is an open development dynamic rather than an enclosed domestic model. Our country is deeply integrated into the global economy. Its economy interacts with and is dependent on the industries of many other countries on a mutual basis. The internal and external markets are interdependent in a relationship of mutual reinforcement. Taking the domestic economy as the mainstay does not mean we run the economy behind closed doors. Instead, we will improve the interaction between domestic and international markets and increase our ability to participate in the allocation of global resources by unlocking the potential of domestic demand. Attracting more global resources and factors of production into the domestic market and taking full advantage of both domestic and international markets and resources. In doing so, we will gain a strategic edge in our opening up. We will not close our doors to the world. We will only open our doors even wider. We must understand the relationship between the domestic economy and the new development dynamic. We will take proactive and effective action to establish new mechanisms for a higher standard, open economy, and open up on a larger scale, across more areas, and in greater depth. Third, the new development dynamic must be built upon a unified national market, not on small and fragmented local markets. The Central Committee's strategy targets the whole country. It does not require localities to create an isolated dynamic within their respective province, city, or county. Every area should find its own position and comparative strengths in the domestic economy and the double development dynamic. Combine this strategy with other initiatives on regional development, coordinated development between regions, functional zoning, and pilot free trade zones, and reach new heights in reform and opening up. No one should try to build a small but all-inclusive dynamic or to create regional barriers in the guise of internal economic flow. Areas where conditions permit may explore ways to facilitate the new development dynamic across the country as forerunners. It is imperative to follow the new development philosophy in creating the new development dynamic. It has been 5 years since we put forward this philosophy. All sectors have reached agreement on this philosophy and are applying it to the full in practice. Creating a new development dynamic is essential for applying the new development philosophy, which is determined by both historical trends and present needs. We should press forward in a holistic manner, be forward-looking, plan the broader picture, organize strategies, and implement them as a whole. We need to synergize policies, ensure mutual reinforcement of different sectors, and expand the application of the new development philosophy. Priorities in creating the new development dynamic. The creation of the new development dynamic is a systemic project. We should strengthen planning and design at the top level and delegate detailed tasks to lower levels with priorities assigned. First, accelerating the process of fostering a complete domestic demand system. This is an important foundation for boosting the domestic economy and reinforcing its status as the mainstay of the double development dynamic. Economic activities constitute a dynamic process that rotates and moves in cycles. We should promote deeper reform, strengthen policy guidance, and remove key bottlenecks. To meet domestic demand, we should integrate the strategy of expanding domestic demand with supply-side structural reform, and attune the supply system closer to domestic demand. The goal is to reach an ideal dynamic equilibrium where demand drives supply and supply in turn creates demand. We need to build a modern logistics system as a key foundation for the double development dynamic, improving both hardware and software, channels and platforms. Second, expediting greater self-reliance in science and technology. This is the key for China to ensure a smoothly functioning domestic economy and to take further advantage of international markets. We should heighten our sense of responsibility and awareness of crisis, dispense with any illusions, and look reality in the face. We need to make breakthroughs in core technologies in key fields and remove bottlenecks in major areas. We should rouse the enthusiasm of our people for innovation, educate and attract talent in all fields, give full play to their knowledge and strength, nurture more world-class scientific and technological leaders and innovation teams, and build a reserve force of young scientists who have a competitive edge on the international stage. We should create a favorable environment for scientists and students who have returned from abroad in which they may live, work, study, and conduct R&D in comfort, and place them in suitable posts so that they can fulfill their potential and contribute to the country. Third, optimizing and upgrading industrial and supply chains. This is urgent if we are to secure the dominance of the domestic economy and increase China's ability in leading international engagement. Manufacturing is critical to our economy and serves as the foundation of all our efforts to strengthen the country. In the fight against COVID-19, our complete manufacturing industry has played a crucial role, which once again proves the significance of the manufacturing sector to the development and security of a country, especially a large country. Therefore, we should prioritize efforts to make our industrial chains more resilient and competitive, and to establish industrial and supply chains that are self-supporting, controllable, safe, and highly efficient. We should thoroughly analyze the industrial and supply chains for key industries, identify and address weak points that are susceptible to risk, design tailored plans and targeted policies for different industries, and gradually improve self-reliance and risk control in industries and fields bearing on national security. We should take strong measures to keep our enterprises well grounded in the domestic economy, and encourage industries to transfer within the country in an orderly manner, or keep the key elements of the industrial chain in China when they move abroad. Fourth, modernizing agriculture and rural areas. Economic flow between urban and rural areas is an important element of the domestic economy and a crucial factor that ensures an appropriate balance between the domestic economy and international engagement. Modernizing agriculture in rural areas is also an important part of building a modern socialist country in all respects, and an essential part of addressing imbalanced and insufficient development. The whole party should continue to give top priority to matters related to agriculture, rural areas, and rural people, and implement the rural revitalization strategy in an all-round way. We need to effectively integrate the consolidation and expansion of poverty elimination results with rural revitalization, further revitalizing all once impoverished areas, promoting economic and social development, and improving people's lives there. Ensuring a sufficient supply of grain and other major agricultural products is of paramount importance to agriculture, rural areas, and rural people. We should never take the issue of food security lightly, and must ensure basic self-sufficiency in grain and absolute security of staple foodstuffs, so that we always have control over our own food supply. We should promote supply-side structural reform of agriculture, optimize the produce mix and distribution of production areas, and reinforce the grain production zones, the protected areas for key agricultural produce, and the areas growing specialty crops. Fifth, improving quality of life. This is the fundamental purpose of ensuring unimpeded flows in the domestic economy, a key link connecting the domestic economy and international engagement, and a key element of their mutual reinforcement. Satisfying the people's changing demands, improving their well-being in all respects, and ensuring a better life for all are the ultimate goals of socialist production. Optimizing the income distribution structure and expanding the middle income group can strengthen the endogenous momentum of high-quality development, which is a key link in ensuring unimpeded flows in the domestic economy. We should continue with multiple models of distribution with to each according to their work as the principal form, increase the proportion of the remuneration for labor in the primary distribution of gross national income, establish a reasonable wage growth mechanism, and guarantee wages and the rights and interests of laborers. We should continue to expand the middle income group and pilot ways to increase earnings for middle and low income groups, such as through the right of use of land, capital, and other factors of production, and the rights to proceeds from them. Adopting a problem-oriented approach, we must do more to improve the lives and address the concerns of the people. Do everything in our capacity to strengthen areas of weakness and to make steady progress towards common prosperity, so that our people will have a greater sense of gain, fulfillment, and security. Sixth, ensuring a security-based development, which is a red line. This is also an important precondition and guarantee for the new development dynamic, and is essential for the smooth flow of the domestic economy. At this plenary session, the party's Central Committee has drawn up a strategic plan for balancing development and security, which is an effective guideline for China's economic and social development in complex circumstances. We should adopt a holistic approach to national security, and strengthen our national security system and capability, placing national interests above everything else, with political security as the foundation and people's safety as the ultimate goal. We need to properly balance opening up and security, build a tight safety net for opening up, and increase our ability to safeguard national security in this environment. Safeguarding people's lives is our top priority, and we must raise our ability to ensure public security. We must do everything possible to ensure that the people live and work in contentment, that society remains stable and orderly, and that our country enjoys enduring peace and stability. Fully understand the new development stage. Part of the speech at a study session on implementing the decisions of the 5th plenary session of the 19th CPC Central Committee, attended by principal officials at the provincial and ministerial level. January 11th, 2021. In order to define the central tasks of current development and set the guidelines, principles, and policies for our work, it is essential to have an accurate understanding of the stage that our party and the people have reached. This is an important approach our party has used to move from victory to victory in leading China's revolution, construction, and reform. At the time of the New Democratic Revolution, 1919 to 1949, our party learned from its arduous efforts that this was a stage that the Chinese Revolution would have to traverse. On this basis, it set the tasks, strategies, and tactics that enabled it to lead the people to win the Chinese Revolution. When the PRC was founded in 1949, our party was keenly aware that a transitional period would be required to move from new democracy to socialism. It therefore formulated a general guideline for this period, which enabled our country to complete its socialist revolution and evolve smoothly into the period of socialist construction. Following the introduction of the Reform and Opening Up policy in 1978, the party reviewed the experience and lessons drawn from socialist development around the world, particularly in China, and concluded that China was in the primary stage of socialism and would remain so for a long time to come. Based on this judgment, it set the basic guideline that led to a phase of reform, opening up, and socialist modernization. Since the 18th CPC National Congress in 2012, the Central Committee has built on the sustained efforts of our predecessors by pursuing a holistic approach to the five-sphere integrated plan and coordinated implementation of the four-pronged comprehensive strategy. As a result, we have witnessed historic achievements and transformations and brought socialism with Chinese characteristics into a new era. The 19th CPC Central Committee determined at its 5th plenary session in 2020 that having realized the first centenary goal of building a moderately prosperous society in all respects, China would build on this achievement and embark on a new journey towards the second centenary goal of building a modern socialist country in all respects, thus signifying the beginning of a new stage of development. This strategic assessment was based on the following considerations. From a theoretical standpoint, Marxism embraces both high ideals and practical targets, and insists on the unity between historical necessity and the stage-specific nature of development, in the belief that as human society moves ultimately towards communism, it must pass through certain historical stages along the way. While applying the basic tenets of Marxism to the practical problems of China, our party came to realize that the development of socialism is a continuous historical process made up of different stages. Between late 1959 and early 1960, Mao Zedong said after reading the Soviet textbook Political Economy, "It is possible to divide the period of socialism into two stages. One could be called underdeveloped socialism, and one comparatively developed socialism. This latter stage may take even longer than the first." Footnote 1. Mao Zedong talks on reading the Soviet textbook Political Economy. Excerpts. Collected Works of Mao Zedong, Volume 8, Chinese edition, People's Publishing House, Beijing, 1999, page 116. End of footnote 1. In 1987, Deng Xiaoping stated, "Socialism itself is the first stage of communism, and here in China, we are still in the primary stage of socialism, that is, the underdeveloped stage. In everything we do, we must proceed from this reality, and all planning must be consistent with it." Footnote 2, Deng Xiaoping, "In everything we do, we must proceed from the realities of the primary stage of socialism." Selected Works of Deng Xiaoping, Volume 3, English edition, Foreign Languages Press, Beijing, 1994, page 248, end of footnote 2. The new development stage we have now reached is just one part of the primary stage of socialism. But thanks to many decades of hard work, it is a period that marks a new starting point for us. From a historical standpoint, this new stage will see our party lead the people in completing the historic transformation from standing up and becoming better off to growing in strength. After its founding in 1921, the CPC united the people and led them through a bitter 28-year-long struggle to establish the PRC and to make the historic transition from the new democratic revolution to socialist revolution. After the founding of the PRC, the party led the people in creatively carrying out a socialist transformation, establishing socialism as China's basic system, and promoting socialist economic and cultural progress on a large scale. The Chinese people stood upright and held firm as they completed the historic transition from socialist revolution to socialist construction. On entering a new historical period, it led the people in launching the great new revolution of reform and opening up, which sparked tremendous enthusiasm, initiative, and creativity, and opened up the path of socialism with Chinese characteristics. As China made large strides in catching up with the times, it took yet another huge leap forward in the process of socialist modernization, and embraced the bright prospects of national rejuvenation. Based on the achievements of the past, we are now writing a new chapter, building China into a modern socialist country in all respects. In terms of the present reality, we now possess solid material foundations for embarking on a new journey towards an even higher goal. Thanks to the tireless efforts since the founding of the PRC, and especially in the past 4 decades since the launch of reform and opening up, China had scaled new heights in economic development, scientific and technological capability, composite national strength, and better living standards by the end of the 13th five-year plan period, 2016 to 2020. China is now the world's second largest economy, the largest industrial nation, the largest trader of goods, and the largest holder of foreign exchange reserves. China's GDP has exceeded renminbi 100 trillion and stands at over US $10,000 in per capita terms. Permanent urban residents account for over 60% of the population, and the middle income group has grown to over 400 million. Particularly noteworthy are our historic successes in building a moderately prosperous society in all respects, and eliminating absolute poverty, a problem that has plagued our nation for thousands of years. These are significant milestones in the process of our socialist modernization. They pave the way as we march towards the second centenary goal in the new development stage. Shortly after the founding of the PRC, our party put forward the goal of building a modern socialist country. Over the course of 13 five-year plans, we have laid solid foundations for achieving this goal. The next 30 years make up the development stage in which we will finally complete this great ambition. We have worked out the roadmap and timetable for our development. By 2035, or within 3 five-year plan periods, we will achieve basic socialist modernization. Then, by the middle of this century, after completing another 3 five-year plans, China will become a great modern socialist country that is prosperous, strong, democratic, culturally advanced, harmonious, and beautiful. The world today is undergoing change on a scale unseen in a century. The recent international situation could be best described by the word disorderly, and it appears that this trend will continue for quite some time. The response to the COVID-19 pandemic has highlighted the leadership capabilities and strengths of the social systems of all countries. The fact that time and momentum are on our side gives us reassurance, resolve, and confidence. That said, we must fully recognize that although China remains in an important period of strategic opportunity for development, and will remain so for some time to come, both the opportunities and challenges we face are changing. Though the two are unprecedented in their extent, the opportunities generally outweigh the challenges. The ancient Chinese philosopher Han Fei-zi once said, "We should manage the small and simple things with care, so as to avoid difficulties and disasters." Footnote 3. Han Fei-zi. End of footnote 3. All of us in the party must remain modest, prudent, and committed to hard work. We must mobilize all positive factors, unite all available forces, and focus on managing our own affairs well, as we work towards our objectives with all our resolve. Our task is to build China into a modern socialist country in all respects. Of course, this modernization is tailored to China's realities and carries distinctive Chinese features. At the 5th plenary session, I highlighted 5 points in particular. China's modernization must cover a massive population, lead to common prosperity, deliver material, cultural, and ethical progress, promote harmony between humanity and nature, and proceed along a path of peaceful development. This is the approach China must take. It must be embodied in our principles, policies, strategies, measures, and work plans to enable the party and the Chinese people to work together towards this end. The new development stage is an important part of socialist development in our country. In 1992, Deng Xiaoping stated, "We have been building socialism for only a few decades and are still in the primary stage. It will take a very long historical period to consolidate and develop the socialist system, and it will require persistent struggle by many generations, a dozen or even several dozen. We can never rest on our oars." Footnote 4. Deng Xiaoping. Excerpts from talks given in Wuchang, Shenzhen, Zhuhai, and Shanghai. Selected works of Deng Xiaoping. Volume 3, English edition, Foreign Languages Press, Beijing, 1994, page 367. End of footnote 4. In my opinion, Deng was making this observation from a political perspective. He was pointing out that it would take a fairly long period of hard work to turn China into a modern country, based on the weak economic foundations of the time. But he was also emphasizing that we must persevere with China's socialist system from one generation to the next, even after modernization is achieved. We must work continuously to find ways to consolidate and develop socialism, for no solution can last forever once in place. Mao Zedong once said, "All things have their boundaries. The way things develop is that one stage leads to another, advancing without interruption. But each and every stage has a boundary. To deny that boundary is to deny qualitative change, full or partial." Footnote 5. See note 1 above, page 108. End of footnote 5. The primary stage of socialism is not a static, rigid, or stagnant period, nor is it a spontaneous and passive stage that can easily and naturally be passed through. Rather, it is a stage of dynamism, action, and promise, one that should always brim with vitality. It develops gradually but ceaselessly, moving from quantitative increases to qualitative leaps. Building a modern socialist China in all respects and realizing basic socialist modernization are essential for China's development in the primary stage of socialism, and essential for China to advance from the primary stage to a higher stage of socialism. Apply the new development philosophy in full. Part of the speech at a study session on implementing the decisions of the 5th plenary session of the 19th CPC Central Committee, attended by principal officials at the provincial and ministerial level. January 11th, 2021. To lead the people in exercising governance, we must be clear about what development we want and how to achieve it. On October 29, 2015, at the 5th plenary session of the 18th CPC Central Committee, I stated, "Philosophy is the precursor of action, and likewise, certain developments are led by certain philosophies. Philosophy decides in a fundamental manner the success of results. Practice has shown us that as development will undergo changes influenced by the prevailing environment and conditions, development philosophy will change accordingly. Since the 18th CPC National Congress in 2012, based on a careful assessment of the economic situation, our party has made timely adjustments to our development philosophy and our way of thinking, which have resulted in historic progress and transformation in the economic development of our country. Here, I would like to mention the most significant of these philosophies. First, we have followed the people-centered philosophy of development. On November 15, 2012, when the new Standing Committee of the Political Bureau of the 18th CPC Central Committee met with Chinese and foreign journalists, I emphasized our dedication to the goal of meeting the people's aspirations for a better life and to the path of common prosperity. On October 29, 2015, at the 5th plenary session of the 18th CPC Central Committee, I presented the vision of people-centered development. On October 29, 2020, at the 5th plenary session of the 19th CPC Central Committee, I further emphasized the need to make substantive progress in promoting common prosperity for all our people. Second, we have stopped thinking that the GDP growth rate is the sole barometer of success. On December 15, 2012, at the Central Conference on Economic Work, I emphasized that we cannot blindly pursue rapid growth with no regard for objective laws and conditions. On April 25, 2013, at a meeting of the Standing Committee of the Political Bureau, I emphasized that local governments should not take national regulatory growth targets as the baseline for local economic development, nor should they compete with each other to achieve higher growth rates. I highlighted the need to focus on improving the quality and returns of growth so as to achieve sustained and healthy development, realize genuine rather than inflated GDP growth, and raise economic efficiency, quality, and sustainability. Third, China's economy has entered a period defined by a complex situation. On July 25, 2013, at a meeting of the Standing Committee of the Political Bureau, I noted that our economy was now facing a complex situation which involved a shift in the growth rate, a painful structural adjustment, and a need to absorb the fallout of previous stimulus policies. At the same time, the global economy was also in a period of profound adjustment, which made for a very complex international environment. This required us to gain a proper understanding of the characteristics of China's current development stage and to undertake reforms and adjustments as needed. Fourth, China's economy has entered a new normal. I pointed this out on December 10, 2013, at the Central Conference on Economic Work. At the same conference on December 9th, the following year, I analyzed 9 development trends to explain why our economic development had entered a new normal. I made it clear that understanding the new normal, adapting to it, and guiding it would constitute the main theme of China's economic development, both at that time and in the period ahead. Fifth, we have enabled the market to play the decisive role in resource allocation, and the government to better fulfill its functions. I said at the 3rd plenary session of the 18th CPC Central Committee in November 2013 that the market is the most efficient means of allocating resources, and that it is a general economic law that the market decides the allocation of resources, thereby redefining the role of the market in China's economy. Sixth, we have committed to the idea that lucid waters and lush mountains are invaluable assets. I put forward this concept during a speech at Nazarbayev University in Kazakhstan on September 7, 2013. I explained that developing an eco-civilization and building a beautiful China is a mission of strategic importance because we want to leave behind a beautiful homeland with blue skies, green fields, and clean waters for our future generations. I reiterated this point during the deliberation session of the Guizhou delegation to the 2nd session of the 12th National People's Congress on March 7, 2014. Seventh, we have applied the new development philosophy. I proposed the idea of innovative, coordinated, green, open, and shared development at the 5th plenary session of the 18th CPC Central Committee in October 2015. I explained that under this new philosophy, innovative development focuses on growth drivers, coordinated development aims to solve imbalances, green development highlights harmony between humanity and nature, open development prioritizes interactions between China and the international community, and shared development underpins social equity and justice. I said at the session that the introduction of the new development philosophy marked a profound change with important implications for China's overall development. Eighth, we have launched supply-side structural reform. At a meeting of the Central Leading Group for Financial and Economic Affairs on November 10, 2015, I called for a greater effort to promote supply-side structural reform. I stated on December 18, 2015, at the Central Conference on Economic Work that the 5 priorities in promoting supply-side structural reform were cutting overcapacity, reducing excess inventory, de-leveraging, lowering costs, and strengthening areas of weakness. At the same conference on December 19, 2018, I proposed the guidelines of consolidating the gains in the 5 priority tasks, strengthening the dynamism of micro-entities, upgrading industrial chains, and ensuring unimpeded flows in the economy. I pointed out that these guidelines constituted a general requirement for furthering supply-side structural reform and spurring high-quality economic development, both at that time and in the period ahead. Ninth, we have striven to resolve imbalances and insufficiencies in development. At the 19th CPC National Congress in October 2017, I concluded that the principal challenge facing our society had evolved into the gap between imbalanced and insufficient development, and the people's growing expectation for a better life. I noted that this represented a historic shift that could affect the whole development prospect. 10th, we have worked to deliver high-quality development. At the 19th CPC National Congress, I pointed out that China's economy was transitioning from rapid growth to high-quality development in order to address the principal challenge now facing our society and implement the new development philosophy. 11th, we have endeavored to modernize our economy. As I said at the 19th CPC National Congress, this is both an urgent requirement for getting us smoothly through this critical transition and a strategic goal for China's development. 12th, we have moved to create a double development dynamic with the domestic economy as the mainstay, and the domestic economy and international engagement providing mutual reinforcement. I put forward this strategy on April 10, 2020, at a meeting of the Central Commission for Financial and Economic Affairs. 13th, we have adopted a holistic approach to development and security. At a group study session of the Political Bureau on May 29, 2015, I emphasized security-based development. On January 18, 2016, at a study session for principal officials at the provincial and ministerial level, I analyzed the risks and challenges we faced in 4 fields on the path of open development. On January 5, 2018, at a study session for members and alternate members of the newly elected CPC Central Committee and principal officials at the provincial and ministerial level, I listed 16 risks in 8 fields that required our full attention. On January 21, 2019, we held a special study session for principal officials at the provincial and ministerial level on worst-case scenario thinking to forestall and diffuse major risks. At the opening ceremony of that study session, I examined major risks in the political, ideological, economic, social, and scientific and technological domains, and in China-U.S. trade friction, in foreign affairs, and within our party. I also set out clear requirements for presenting and resolving such risks, and emphasized the need to stay keenly alert to black swan and gray rhino incidents. In reviewing this course of events, I wish to underline the paramount importance of the new development philosophy among the key theories and concepts on economic and social development that we have put forward since the 18th CPC National Congress. As a systematic framework, the new development philosophy addresses a series of theoretical and practical questions regarding our development goals, drivers, methods, and pathways, and defines the key political parameters including our stance values, and model and path of development. The whole party must apply the new development philosophy in full, to the letter, and in all fields. To this end, we should adopt the following approaches in its implementation. First, we need to understand the fundamental aim of the new development philosophy. As an ancient Chinese statesman observed, in a country the people are the most important. Footnote 1, Fang Xuanling et al., Book of Jin Shu. Fang Xuanling, 579-648, was a scholar and statesman of the Tang dynasty. End of footnote 1. The people represent the most solid foundation and the greatest source of strength for our party in governing the country. Working for the well-being of the people and the rejuvenation of the Chinese nation is the immutable aim of our party in leading the modernization drive. It is the ultimate goal of all our work and also the root and essence of the new development philosophy. We will gain a sound understanding of development and modernization only if we follow a people-centered approach and adhere to the principle that development is for the people and by the people, and that its benefits are shared by the people. The Soviet Union was the world's first socialist country and once enjoyed spectacular success. Ultimately, however, it collapsed. One main reason for its failure was that the Communist Party of the Soviet Union became detached from the people and turned into a group of privileged bureaucrats who only served their own interests. Even in a modernized country, if the party in power turns its back on the people, it will imperil the fruits of modernization. Realizing common prosperity is more than an economic goal. It is a major political issue that bears on the foundations of our party's governance. We must not allow the gap between rich and poor to get any wider, where the poor keep getting poorer while the rich continue to grow richer. We cannot permit the wealth gap to become an unbridgeable gulf. Of course, we must pursue common prosperity in a progressive manner, giving full consideration to what is necessary and what is possible, and adhering to the laws governing economic and social development. At the same time, however, we cannot afford to just sit around and wait. We must be proactive about narrowing the gaps between regions, between urban and rural areas, and between rich and poor people. We should promote all-round social progress and well-rounded personal development, advocate social equity and justice, and ensure that development offers greater benefits to all the people in a fair way. We should see that our people have a stronger sense of gain, fulfillment, and security, and to make them feel that common prosperity is not an empty slogan, but a concrete fact that they can see and feel for themselves. Second, we need to stay problem-oriented in implementing the new development philosophy. Today, China stands at a new starting point in development, which requires us to employ a problem-oriented approach so that we can apply the new development philosophy with greater precision. We need to effectively address imbalances and insufficiencies in order to improve the quality of our development. For example, many obstacles are impeding our progress towards greater self-reliance in science and technology, which is essential to China's survival and development. Another problem is how to narrow the wide development gap between urban and rural areas and between regions. The answer calls for extensive and in-depth research into many new issues. In particular, we need to intensify our research and come up with clear ideas about how to manage disparities and restructuring in regional development, accelerated population migration across regions, and a lower desire among rural residents to settle in cities. There is a broad consensus about promoting a green transformation in every aspect of economic and social development. However, our energy system is still heavily reliant on coal and other fossil fuels, which puts a great strain on our efforts to realize a green and low-carbon transformation in our production models and ways of life. The targets of achieving peak carbon dioxide emissions by 2030 and carbon neutrality by 2060 are formidable. Given the backlash against economic globalization and the complex and volatile international environment, we need to strike a good balance between strengthening self-reliance and pursuing openness and cooperation, between participating in the international division of labor and safeguarding national security, and between introducing foreign investment and conducting security reviews so that China can open wider to the outside world without prejudice to its national security. In short, at the new development stage, we need to expand our understanding of the new development philosophy so that we can take more targeted and more concrete measures that will truly deliver high-quality development. Third, we need to be mindful of potential risks. Prior planning prevents pitfalls, and proper preparation preempts perils. Footnote: Liu Xiang, Garden of Stories, Shuo Yuan. Liu Xiang, 77-6 BC, was an economist and writer of the Western Han Dynasty. End of footnote 2. As the principal challenge in our society has changed, and the global balance of power is shifting, China will have to contend with more internal and external risks. We must be more aware of potential dangers, have plans in place to counter worst-case scenarios, and prepare for more complex and graver challenges. The Central Committee prioritized issues of security in its recommendations for formulating the 14th Five-Year Plan for Economic and Social Development and long-range objectives through the year 2035. It advises that we ensure security in all areas and throughout the process of China's development. If our security foundations are unstable, our development will be precarious. We should uphold political security, the safety of the people, and the interests of the nation as an indivisible whole. We must have the courage and capacity to meet challenges and build up our strength to deter threats. We should prevent drastic fluctuations in the macroeconomy and avoid excessive foreign investment inflows or outflows in the capital market. We must ensure the security of food, energy, and key resources, as well as the stability and security of industrial and supply chains. We need to prevent the disorderly expansion and unchecked growth of capital, and ensure eco-security and workplace safety. We should guard against the risk of large-scale job losses, improve public health security, and effectively prevent and handle incidents of social disturbance. In strengthening the institutional framework for safeguarding national security, we should draw on the experience of other countries, work out how to establish appropriate safeguards where necessary, and identify effective solutions for a range of national security issues. Move faster to create a new development dynamic. Part of the speech at a study session on implementing the decisions of the 5th plenary session of the 19th CPC Central Committee, attended by principal officials at the provincial and ministerial levels. January 11th, 2021. The recommendations for formulating the 14th Five-Year Plan for Economic and Social Development and Long-Range Objectives through the year 2035 defined the creation of a new development dynamic with the domestic economy as the mainstay and the domestic economy and international engagement providing mutual reinforcement. This major strategy concerns our country's overall development interests and must be thoroughly understood and actively implemented. In recent years, we have witnessed a backlash against economic globalization and profound changes affecting the international economy. The COVID-19 pandemic exacerbated opposition to globalization, and many countries have now become more inward-looking. During the epidemic, I visited several provinces to gain an in-depth understanding of their measures to contain the virus and the problems in reopening the economy. During my visit to Zhejiang province, I found that global industrial and supply chains had been partially disrupted due to the pandemic. This had directly impacted the domestic economy. Many companies were forced to suspend operations because they could not bring in the raw materials and personnel they needed or send their goods overseas. I realized just how much things had changed. The environment and the conditions that had facilitated large-scale imports and exports were no longer in place. Given these new circumstances, we needed to come up with new thinking to steer development. Accordingly, in April last year, I proposed that we create a double development dynamic. At the 5th plenary session of the 19th CPC Central Committee in October 2020, we adopted comprehensive measures to launch this strategy. The establishment of the new development dynamic is a strategic and proactive step for taking the initiative in development, a major historic mission that must be fulfilled in the new development stage, and an important measure for applying the new development philosophy. As a socialist country with a large population and a vast market, China is certain to encounter various pressures and challenges in the process of modernization, the likes of which no other country has ever experienced. In 1936, Mao Zedong made an observation that still holds true for us, even today. He said, "No matter how complicated, grave, and harsh the circumstances, what a military leader needs most of all is the ability to function independently in organizing and employing the forces under his command. He may often be forced into a passive position by the enemy, but the important thing is to regain the initiative quickly. Failure to do so spells defeat. The initiative is not something imaginary, but is concrete and material." Footnote 1. Mao Zedong, Problems of Strategy in China's Revolutionary War. Selected Works of Mao Zedong, Volume 1, English Edition, Foreign Languages Press, Beijing, 1965, page 234. End of footnote 1. If we can, through our own efforts, ensure that the flows of the domestic economy remain unimpeded, we can effectively shield ourselves from harm. We will then have the vigor and vitality not only to survive but to thrive in the most volatile international situations, making it impossible for anyone to keep us down or to back us into a corner. We must speed up our efforts to create the new development dynamic so that we will be better able to survive, compete, and maintain sustainable development, whatever challenges or difficulties we encounter, whether anticipated or not. This way, we can ensure the course of national rejuvenation is never delayed or interrupted. In practice, there are some misunderstandings that we need to guard against. Firstly, some people tend to speak only about the first part, that is, the domestic economy, as the mainstay of the new development dynamic, and call for China to sharply narrow its opening to the outside world. Secondly, some others speak only of the latter part, or the mutual reinforcement between the domestic economy and international engagement, and still subscribe to the old dynamic of large-scale imports and exports, with both ends of the economic process, markets and resources, being located abroad despite the changes to the international landscape. Thirdly, sticking to one's own line and focusing only on one's own sphere of interest is also a mistake. Some are neglecting the building of a unified national market with a nationwide economic flow, preferring instead to focus on their own local or regional market. Fourthly, some have equated unimpeded economic flow with smooth logistics and are focused only on this basic level of circulation. Fifthly, in resolving technological bottlenecks, some people want to do everything themselves, which results in redundancy or heedless of unfavorable conditions, such as a weak industrial base. They tend to carry out extravagant projects that will ultimately fail. Sixthly, in working to boost domestic demand and expand the domestic market, some people have once again resorted to blind lending to expand investment and overstimulating consumption, or even have reverted to energy-intensive and high-emission projects. Seventh, some are concentrating on demand-side management at the expense of supply-side structural reform, making it impossible to achieve a higher-level dynamic equilibrium in which supply promotes demand. Eighth, some think that the new development dynamic is a matter for the economic and technology departments and hardly concerns them. All of these mindsets are inadequate, or even erroneous, We must guard against them and rectify them should they arise. The key to building a new development dynamic is to ensure unimpeded economic flow. As is the case in traditional Chinese medicine, one must remove blockages to stimulate the free flow of vital energy and maintain the body's balance. Economic activity requires the integration of various production factors at all stages, from production through distribution and circulation to consumption, in order to realize a smooth economic cycle. Under normal circumstances, this will lead to greater material production, greater social wealth, greater well-being for the people, and greater national strength, giving rise to an upward spiral of development. When obstructions and breakdowns occur, economic flow is disrupted. From a macroeconomic perspective, the economic growth rate drops, unemployment rises, risks arise, and the balance of payments falls into disequilibrium. At the macroeconomic level, it leads to problems such as overcapacity, declining enterprise returns, and falling personal incomes. In the present stage of China's development, the most important task in ensuring smooth economic flow is maintaining effective operations on the supply side. If we have a strong capacity for effective supply, we can clear obstructions, resolve bottlenecks, create jobs, and provide incomes which will increase our capacity to create demand. To this end, we must treat further supply-side structural reform as our main task, and continue to carry out the priority tasks of cutting overcapacity, reducing excess inventory, de-leveraging, lowering costs, and strengthening areas of weakness. We must comprehensively improve and upgrade the industrial structure, increase our capacity for innovation, our competitiveness, and our overall strength, boost the resilience of the supply system, and ensure that inputs produce higher quality outputs with greater efficiency, so as to achieve a dynamic economic equilibrium at a high level. I have said that the essence of the new development dynamic is realizing a high level of self-reliance. The environment for our economic development is changing, particularly with respect to our comparative advantages in production factors. As labor costs are rising and the carrying capacity of our resources and environment have reached a limit, the production function formula of the past is no longer sustainable, and science and technology are becoming more and more important on all fronts. In these circumstances, it is important to put more emphasis on homegrown innovation. As a result, the recommendations present two major measures: promoting scientific and technological innovation and removing bottlenecks in industry. We must understand that these issues are vital to the survival and development of our nation. We should comprehensively strengthen planning for scientific and technological innovation to bring together superior resources and implement a competitive mechanism to award research projects in order to promote strong and steady progress in innovation. We must better align the chains of innovation and industry and draw up roadmaps, timetables, and systems of responsibility. Where appropriate, relevant departments and local governments should play the leading role in this effort. Where it is appropriate for enterprises to take the lead, governments should give them their full support. State-owned enterprises directly administered by the central government and other state-owned enterprises must have the courage to shoulder their responsibilities and to take the lead in making themselves the source of original technologies and the leaders of the modern industrial chain. In today's world, markets are the scarcest resource. China's market is thus a huge advantage for our country. We must make full use of this factor and steadily consolidate it to make it a strong pillar of the new development dynamic. Expanding domestic demand is not a temporary policy to cope with financial risks and external shocks, nor is it about unleashing a deluge of strong stimulus policies or increasing government investment. Rather, it is about establishing an effective institutional framework to boost domestic demand based on our country's actual economic status, moving to tap the potential of demand, working faster to build a complete demand system, strengthening demand-side management, and expanding consumer spending, while also upgrading the level of consumption so that the development of our vast domestic market becomes a sustainable process. To create a new development dynamic and pursue high standard opening up, we require a robust domestic economic flow and stable economic fundamentals. On this base, we can create a strong pull for global production factors and resources, the ability to hold our own amidst intense international competition, and powerful momentum for the allocation of global resources. We should continue to expand opening up based on the flow of production factors such as goods, services, capital, and talent, and steadily expand institutional opening up with regard to rules, regulations, management, and standards. We should ensure that China's domestic economy plays a stronger role in guiding the double development dynamic and foster new strengths for China's participation in international economic cooperation and competition. We should work to harness international engagement as a means for improving the efficiency and level of the domestic economy and the quality and allocation of our production factors. Through competition in the international market, we will boost the competitiveness of our export products and services and promote industrial transformation and upgrading to increase China's influence in global industry chains, supply chains, and innovation chains. Chinese enterprises now have interests that extend to many countries around the world. This requires that we pay more attention to understanding international affairs and carrying out thorough studies on countries that are our stakeholders, trading partners, and investment destinations in order to establish a clear picture of potential benefits and risks. To sum up, the requirements to enter a new development stage, apply a new development philosophy, and build a new development dynamic are determined by the theoretical, historical, and practical logic of our country's economic and social development. These three elements are closely interrelated. Our entry into the new development stage clarifies the historic juncture that national development has reached. The new development philosophy makes clear the guiding principles behind our modernization drive, and the new development dynamic elucidates the path that will take us to economic modernization. An understanding of the new development stage will provide us with the practical basis for applying the new development philosophy and creating a new development dynamic. The new development philosophy will provide us with a guide for understanding the new development stage and creating a new development dynamic. Creating a new development dynamic is a strategic choice in terms of our response to the opportunities and challenges in the new development stage and our implementation of the new development philosophy. End of Part 7. To hear all our audiobooks, especially those that aren't available on YouTube, become a Patreon supporter. It's the first link in the description below. Thank you for your support.